You're listening to Dirty Feet, a podcast from No More Radio.
Vous écoutez le podcast Dirty Feet sur les ondes de No More Radio.
Hosted by,
animé par
Allison Burns,
JD Papillon,
et Stéphanie Morin-Robert.
Stay tuned.
We're gonna move you.
So the Phénomena Festival is a bilingual interdisciplinary festival that is produced by Les Filles Électriques, and it's been running since 2012. It was kind of birthed from the ashes of the Festival Voix d'Amérique, which ran from 2002 to 2011. So this is a festival that takes place mostly in the Mile End, and celebrates kind of atypical approaches to art and multidisciplinary practice and things that are a little bit unique and different. And we're going to be speaking with some people who are producing work as part of this festival in 2014. We've got in studio return guests Helen Simard and Karen Fennell, who are working on a collaboration that's going to be actually as a double bill with our very own Stephanie Morin-Robert. So we're going to talk to her later about Me, Myself, and I, the revamped kind of movement-infused version. But for now, we're going to talk to Helen and Karen about The Trouble with 21 Realities, which is a mashup between 21 Angus Young, which is a work that Helen has presented in the past, and the work that Karen and Jackie Gallant are working on currently, which they've done a couple collaborations together so far that you may have seen either at Short and Sweet or Edgy Women. And this is a new creation that they've kind of, or a new creative endeavor that they're combining with Helen's creation, as far as I understand it. So, ladies, thank you very much for being here today. Perhaps we can clear this up.
No problem. We're not always sure we understand what's going on either, so it's okay.
Perhaps just because not everybody heard. Did we cover 21 Angus Young?
I don't know if I came in to talk about that. I know I came in and talked with you guys when we were doing No Fun. So maybe we didn't talk about it. Yeah, it's a very big project. I'm very obsessed, as can be seen in the work I've been doing for the past couple of years with musicians and movement that musicians produce in playing instruments and singing and doing what they do. And I'm really interested in the idea of kind of taking that movement vocabulary and trying to reframe it choreographically to turn it into dance. And so 21 Angus Young was a project that I started that was looking at and analyzing and breaking down movements drawn from Angus Young's performances over the past 40 years or so, specifically focusing on a striptease sequence that he does in the documentary AC/DC Let There Be Rock. So it's a film from 1979. And he has this striptease that he does while they play Bad Boy Boogie that he's been doing throughout their career. He still does it today. So it's this very grotesque, kind of hypersexual but not particularly sexy striptease moment. I mean, I guess some people must think it's sexy because he's still doing it after 40 years. So, and it always gets a great reaction. So we kind of took that as a basis to kind of create this crazy interactive piece that has anywhere usually between 21 and 30 performers in it, depending on the size of the venue we're in and depending on how many people can show up on a particular day to do a show.
And then to get background in your ongoing collaborations with Jackie, she is a musician and performance artist, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think she would say performance artist, but she's a musician who collaborates with people in a lot of different disciplines and
Perfect.
And often performs live. So she's a musician, performer, sound artist, video artist.
Great. Do you want to talk about your approach together in general terms, and then about specifically what you want to do for this production?
Sure. So, yeah, we've been working together for about a year, and we've done a number of kind of small performances here and there, and at different kinds of venues. I think similarly to Helen, I realized at a certain point that I was just always super inspired by music and by watching musicians perform live and the viscerality of that. And I became really interested in collaborating with a musician. And when Jackie and I started working together, we realized that we have a cool kind of chemistry together as performers, and our approach has turned into a thing which is really collaborative. So we're really both co-creating all of the material. And it's really going between being music and there's a lot of text. So I guess it's more theatrical in certain ways. And then there's also dance and movement involved. And so we're working on this bigger piece that's called The Trouble with Reality. We just had a month-long residency this past summer at Studio 303 in which we were researching ideas for that. And so the piece that we're doing with Helen in Phénomena is pulling from some of the material and ideas that we have around that project, but is going, in a certain direction to kind of fuse with what Helen's bringing to the table. What else to say? I think personally, I think this is a thing that Jackie and I share. I've become kind of obsessed with just ideas of identity and how we define ourselves as people, but also as artists, and also just ideas of authenticity and spectacle and sort of images that artists create of themselves, or especially in the world of rock music or pop music. There's really, people kind of develop these sort of iconic images, or maybe the public develops those images of them. But so we sort of have this thread or this through line of either kind of blowing up those images or those ideas, and kind of attempting to weave back and forth between performance modes, kind of going between a thing which is a complete falsity, we're kind of creating a fake image or a fake situation, and then kind of going between that and things which are actually really just real and happening in the moment. If that makes any sense.
Absolutely. It also reinforces that your interests, your interests are aligned, and that you have a lot of parallels in the projects as they stand alone. When it comes to the mashup version that you're to be presenting for Phénomena, how are you approaching this? Is this something where you're taking, mostly finished work after the residency and work that you've presented before and patchworking it together? Are you collaborating on integrating it? How does this work?
There's definitely, it's always interesting on any collaboration, and it's been really interesting. I'm really used to collaborating with the team of artists that I bring together, and also through all the work that I did with Solid State for 12 years, which was a constant collaborative creation. But what's been interesting about this process is taking something that in a way I felt was a finished product and trying not to do just a patchwork, but actually take it apart and say, okay, well, what can go where, and what makes sense with what Jackie and Karen are proposing, and what images complement each other or completely create ruptures with each other, and how can we try to kind of not create something completely new, because it's a lot of work out of nowhere, but how can we take this material that was something else and turn it into a new experience for ourselves as artists, and also for the audiences who maybe have seen the work before and think, oh, I already saw your show, so whatever, I don't have to see it again. I think it's a completely different thing. We did make a bit of a structure for ourselves, that was fun to just kind of walk in and be like, okay, what are we going to do? Okay, there's going to be this. But then all the thises that we laid out have evolved a bit or changed or gone in directions we didn't necessarily expect when we started rehearsing. So it's a lot of fun, and it's kind of crazy at the same time.
But I feel like I'm kind of actually shocked at how easily everything is sort of just gelling together.
Yeah.
I think think that was our assumption. Like we were like, okay, we all have a lot of material that we're drawing from, and we're pretty certain that like we feel confident that we're going to be able to like put it together, and it's not going to like we're making an hour-long piece, but it's not like we're making it from scratch. Like we're pulling from a lot of things, and we've already kind of talked a lot about ways in which we're on the same page and ways in which we feel like our ideas relate. But when we've been in the studio, I feel like it's actually been pretty organic. Like we'll just be like, okay, what if we try, taking this idea that we have, and then, using your group of performers to like kind of expand it out in this different way. And it just kind of goes like, oh, that works. Okay, cool. That's a whole section. Like it's been pretty, it's coming together in a really fun way. And I think what I was excited about too, to do this project, was to give me a chance to look at the material that we're working on, that me and Jackie are working on in a different way. And I think it's really fun actually to see. I mean, we have a lot of material, we have a lot of options, and we have a lot of performers. So I think, yeah, we're able to just kind of go in a lot of different directions, but it feels like everything makes sense together, and there's a continuity.
I also find for me the having another group of people who have their own concept that's clear and their own sections that are clear is actually really liberating, because part of the problem with collaborative work often is when you get into the cycle of no. And so someone proposes an idea and then everyone just says no, that won't work. No, let's not do that. And sometimes it's too many people having too many ideas and proposing too many things without ever settling on anything. So everything always has to be completely negotiated because we're collective and we should make sure that everyone gets a say in this and everyone has to be comfortable. Whereas there's stuff that Jackie and Karen are doing that's what Jackie and Karen are doing. And so I'm in a position where I get to respond to what they're doing and see what's there and respect that vision and not try to say, oh, well, it should be like this because this is what I would do. It's like, no, they bring something. So it's exciting for me to say, okay, what does that something stimulate in me and what links can I make with the work that I'm doing? So, yeah, I feel like it's a really nice, liberating way of collaborating, of saying, I'm going to respect you and you're going to respect me, but let's make sure that the thing that comes out of it isn't just a collage of two visions. Let's try to make something unique emerge for this particular experience.
Mm-hmm. And for this particular experience in the Sala Rosa, I know that it's both of your works are very immersive and somewhat interactive, and we're kind of diving into this world of blood, sweat, and tears and rock and roll. And how do you feel that does that expand your idea? Does it help? What do you feel about the space, and how does that influence this collaboration in the work and the direction you've taken?
I think we're pretty excited to have the show at Sala. I mean, it's an awesome venue, and I think another thing that Helen and I are both into is having the opportunity to present work not necessarily in conventional dance spaces. And the Sala Rosa is more of a music venue, so right away there's a different kind of vibe in there, and we're excited a lot about the possibilities of that space, and we definitely plan on pushing the limits of what we can do in that space. I think we're using it in every possible way that we can. And so that's pretty exciting. And I think we just kind of decided that we're taking risks about the way that we're attempting to use the space, and we're confident that's going to work. But we're definitely not just making a show that happens on a stage.
Mm-hmm. And that was really important to us, that it not, because I often enjoy it, like presenting work that uses theater spaces in unconventional ways, because then you're playing with the whole code of what's expected in a theater, what's acceptable in a theater, and you get to blow that up. And it was really important to me that we not walk into Sala and just set up chairs and rows and perform on a stage, because it seems like a complete waste of time to try to turn this awesome, quirky live music venue into a theater to then break theatrical codes. I mean, it makes no work. It makes no sense. So instead of doing that, we're really trying to say, yeah, like, where can the attention be pulled? Where can the attention be pushed? How can we play with people having this desire of wanting to see something happening on a stage? And how can we either please them in that way or completely shatter their expectations of where the performance is taking place and where it's not? It's really one of the initial triggers for this whole like obsession with musicians that I have is that I went to see Swans. I don't know if you know that band. They're really loud, like really loud, and you have to wear earplugs just to be able to watch the show. It's part of their thing. They're playing music so loud that you almost have to like throw up or go to the bathroom. Like you're having that type of physical response to it. And I'm a bit claustrophobic, and I tend to stand at the back of a space in shows like that. And during the night, I realized that for me, the show wasn't just what was going on stage, but the show was all the interactions happening in the audience. Someone trying to get to the bar, someone trying to get into the crowd but not being able to, someone getting pushed out of a mosh pit. All those interactions are part of my experience as a spectator. And so I think what we're trying to do is make the entire space a performative space, as opposed to it being a distinction between this is where action happens, and this is where you sit as a spectator and get to be comfortable in your seat and safe.
Earlier, Karen, you were talking about the scale, and you're talking about making things bigger, and I imagine that happens both in the number of performers. I mean, we're talking about a huge number of performers in a smaller space, and I imagine caricature might also be part of that scale. Is there another element there that how do you amplify these ideas?
Well, I think that one thing that we're doing is taking kind of like creating a kind of, sometimes some of the sections of the piece, we're creating a sort of a recognizable scene or scenario that people could have certain expectations or associations with, and taking that and either kind of going to an extreme into what people expect, doing that, but then also going in a direction that they don't expect. But another thing that I think we're doing in this whole work is that I personally really like is we really want to kind of constantly surprise the audience and have them not expect what's coming next. And so we're really going between extremes of things, and going between things which are really big, which attract a lot of attention, to some things which are really quiet and demand like a certain focus. So I think we're kind of constantly, turning the volume like all the way up and then all the way down. And so that, and trying to, I think that Helen and I are both, interested in how you can play with that, and how you can achieve that, like to get people to like go from watching a big crazy thing which is really in your face to like really honing in on something which is really more subtle. And it's that whole thing of like, I remember being in choreography school, dance school, and one of the teachers saying like, in order to make people see one thing, you have to show them the opposite. So if you make a thing which is only, if you're like, I'm interested in work that's really dramatic, but you only ever show the really dramatic and everything stays vibrating at this same frequency, then at a certain point you don't see that anymore because you just become like normalized to it. And I think that's a thing that really stuck with me. And so I'm interested in how to really kind of swing between extremes.
Which is a way also of creating sometimes confusion, which creates attention. Because it was one of the musicians I work with, Ted Yates, who's in the band Dead Messenger, who I often collaborate with. He was saying, one of the only things that makes us uncomfortable anymore is not understanding what's going on, because performance has just provoked and pushed everything so far. After the 90s, after Bob Flanagan, after Gigi Allen, there's not much more left you can do in performance. Once you die on stage and your funeral becomes a performance type of thing, provocation has been pushed to its edges, and the only way we tend to engage or provoke people now is perhaps by confusing them. And when you're I often find when I watch shows, dance performances, if I figure about like 20 minutes in that I've understood, I completely shut off as a spectator.
Yeah.
And then often you're stuck there for another 40 minutes twiddling your thumbs, being like, yeah, I got it. And the show might be fantastic, but you've disengaged and you're not trying to get into that world anymore. And I think a bit of what we're trying to do is create this instability or confusion or chaos with an accumulation of materials. So we're working with movement, we're working with text, we're working with sound, we're working with silence, we're working with stillness, we're working with the environment. So by putting all these things on top of each other and having accumulation, and then that's it, sometimes just pulling the rug completely out from under you and taking it all away, and having space and pause and breath, you kind of create this environment where it's like, well, what's happening? And I'm always really excited if someone's like, what's happening? I don't understand. I'm like, yes. Because, in the end, there's nothing to understand, really, is the fantastic part, but at least you're sitting there thinking about it as opposed to being blasé.
And I think at the same time, like, I think we're definitely also giving people the chance to be satisfied, like you can watch a section and be like, oh yeah, I was really drawn into that. I get it. Like that happened. Okay. But then I think what the thing is that we're trying to do is that people think like, oh cool. Okay. I get it. This is what's happening. This is where this is going. And then it goes, nope, in a different direction. And then you sort of have to keep kind of recalibrating your attention. But at the same time, I think we're offering things which, like, people can get a sense of satisfaction, like they get into a thing and they do get it and it completes itself. Mm-hmm. What is really fun too in this collaboration is the fact that, well, it's a collaboration of like two collaborative projects, so it's like a meta collaboration. But just the fact that, we have Helen and I are coming from dance, and then Jackie and Roger and the band are coming from music. There's a lot of different, we see things in different ways and have different things to propose. And it's cool to be able to perform in Sala and to have, quite a few options with the sound. So, there's a lot of things that you can do when you're working with sound, you're working with movement and going back and forth between like what is the main focus, what is the main thing that's drawing attention? Is it bodies in the space? Is it sound coming through the speakers? Is it sound coming from different places? Is it the band singing a song? Like there's a lot of different options of things that can happen.
I think we're all thoroughly intrigued and also out of time.
So they also sell drinks at Sala. So, like, if you don't like the show, you can just sit there and
just get really drunk.
It's totally cool.
Is heckling encouraged in this production?
Yeah, that's like, yeah. I mean,
as long as you don't hurt any of the performers.
Yeah.
We have standards, people. Oh my goodness. Okay.
Like, don't throw any beer bottles at us or anything.
You could do that in my piece.
So we've been speaking with Karen Fennell and Helen Simard, who are collaborating with Jackie Gallant on the show The Trouble with 21 Realities, which is a double bill with Me, Myself, and I being presented at Sala Rosa here in Montreal on the 23rd of October at 8 o'clock. Doors open at 7:30. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thanks, guys, for having us.
In the second half of our show, we're going to be talking about the other half of this double bill that is being presented as part of Festival Phénomena. So we just discussed the Trouble with 21 Realities. Now we're going to talk about Me, Myself, and I, which is Stephanie Morin-Robert's show. You presented this at Mainline earlier this year as more of a one-woman show with movement in it. And as far as I understand it, this version is going to be a lot more movement heavy, correct?
Yeah, a lot of underlining the performance element of it a lot more. I think throughout the residency I had at Mainline Theatre, my main focus, other than for Body and Light, was to create this one-woman show based on my childhood memories and these stories, because I've recently developed a very big interest for storytelling and the use of words and seeing that as an extension of the body and all of that. So I really did this like 360 spin of doing a show that was pretty much, I would say, a good 90% storytelling, which was really challenging because I often feel like I'm not very good with words, and just like when you get stressed out, the stutter and all of that, and having worked through that was actually really rewarding. And so now I have this show with stories that I know are interesting because people seem to be reacting to them. And for this second chance to stage the work is I think going to be a lot of fun, because through those stories and those elements, I'm going to just create a structure and let myself go. And I'm not really sure what exactly is going to happen, but I do know the direction I'm hoping to take with it. So I'm using projection and a video camera, which for me has a pretty big signification, because I would always hate having my picture taken or being on film when I was young, because of how different my eyes looked compared to everybody, or like the shine of the flash not quite reflecting off the same way. So I think it's an element that will help me dive into a much more vulnerable state. Yeah.
We didn't cover the first showing of this work, and also for listeners that perhaps are just tuning in for the first time, it's Me, Myself, and I, EYE, for the very reason that you have a glass eye.
Yeah.
And that is
the news is out. I have a glass eye. I know I've mentioned it during other interviews, or I realize that it is a pretty big part of me, but I forget about it, because for me, this is what's normal. This is what's familiar. And since I've always been this way. But to put our listeners into context, I was diagnosed with retinoblastoma when I was 2 years old. So they removed my eye in order to save my life, because that was the only thing that was possible at the time. I think now, where technology is and where science is, that they could have probably saved the eye. But then, in the 90s, they weren't able to. So here I am. I have a glass eye, and I'm doing a show about it. So I think it's about moving forward and moving past those really difficult times of being bullied and having to face that reality of everyone seeing me as a different person. And it's not really something that happens anymore as an adult, because we're all mature, and that's not something that happens. But when I was younger and in primary school, it was a thing, whether you wore glasses or you had a prosthetic hand, or you were in a wheelchair, or you were overweight, or you had acne, or, there's all these things that made you stand out and made you vulnerable and made you a victim of either bullying or low self-esteem, I guess. So I think I'm just laughing about those things and trying to break that stigma and that taboo around like what bullying is, and because there's actually something quite charming about overcoming that and becoming a stronger person, but also understanding that these things about us that make us vulnerable are actually what make us who we are and what make us stronger people. It's a superpower.
So I've seen you tell some of these stories that comprise the larger piece in storytelling events like Confabulation. I've seen the piece itself when you presented it at Mainline.
What is the instinct that had you apply for Phénomena and infuse dance and projection into the work and kind of add some disciplines to it?
Yeah, I think that a really interesting thing about doing project applications is that you always have to project a few months ahead of time or even a year before it actually happens. So I think about 6 months ago, wrote this application of like, yeah, I think in November I'll probably want to do a show, or, I need to constantly be booking my agenda up with performances, and having material and being excited about revisiting it. And because I think what I presented at Mainline was, to me, a work in progress and this first step of something I wanted to continue to develop, because a show that is about myself kind of changes as I learn things and make my way through life. So I see these stories kind of shifting and changing as I figure out those gaps between interpretation and a better understanding of them. It's interesting because we talked to having just spoke to Karen and Helen about their work and this kind of meta of collaborations and all these people getting involved and this mashup and all these ideas. I feel like it kind of made me feel like, oh my God, I'm really all alone. So I think that's a good thing, because this is really about, it's really about having this intimate moment with the audience and sharing a story, whether it's through movement, images, or actual storytelling.
And before we started recording, Helen was talking about, her desire to be in a double bill with somebody whose work would make sense next to hers. And it sounds like she was satisfied with the pairing. Can you reflect at all at how, other than overwhelming by, the 31 odd people that are going to be on stage for her performance, what about, what we just heard described relates to what you're doing?
It's funny because it kind of comes back to what Karen was saying about these going from one extreme to the other, these contrasts, and of, something playing something very loud and overpowering and overwhelming, and then taking that away and going to silence. So to me, the contrast is quite lovely, and I think that it will probably, once their piece comes on, it will really be surprising and in a whole different energy. And for me, it's nice to be able to start off from a very neutral place, because I think going after their piece would be a challenge and would be really different and could probably work. But yeah, there's something really, it makes me shy. It makes me feel uneasy. It makes me feel nervous. And I think that's perfect, because that's what this piece I'm presenting, that's really what it's about. It's about being in that situation,
Well, you all seem very eager to explore the authenticity of your performance as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's about being real.
Yeah. Well, Stéphanie Morin-Robert, thank you so much for speaking to us about your piece that's going to be presented as part of Phénomena. That's Me, Myself, and I. And again, this is a double bill. It's playing on the 23rd of October at Sala Rosa here in Montreal at 8 o'clock. Also happening this week that I did want to mention, because we're all excited about it. It's a double bill happening as part of the Dance season. It's at 5e Salle. It's the Wants and Needs production Chorus 2, which is choreographed by Sasha Kleinplatz. This has been presented a couple places around the city. It was presented at the Mai and at Baie Saint-Michel at some point. There was also Tentacle Tribe, Nobody Likes a Pixelated Squid. And this was seen at Tangente a couple years ago as part of a larger evening with different works. And we had them on, and they're just super cool people. So we're really stoked for that double bill, which is happening this week. So I guess that's it for Dirty Feet for this episode, and we'll speak to you again soon. Peace.
Night after night, day after day.
Dirty Feet is recorded every week at the Montreal Improv Theatre. Check them out at montrealimprov.com.
Dirty Feet est produit et animé par
Produced and hosted by Allison Burns,
JD Papillon,
et Stéphanie Moret-Robert.
You can find out more about our show at nomoreradio.com, follow us on Twitter at Dirty Feet, and find us on Facebook at Dirty Feet Podcast.
Vous pouvez écouter tous nos épisodes sur notre site web ou vous pouvez vous abonner également sur iTunes à notre podcast.
Listen to past episodes on the website or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes.
While you're there, be sure to give us a rating and or leave a comment to help us spread the word.
Tune in next week for a whole new show.